Antarctica, located at the southernmost area of planet Earth, is a gigantic ice desert of 13.6 million kilometers squared. That's 5.27 million square miles. That makes it 35% larger than the entire European continent. We are talking about the last region to be discovered and colonized by humans. And although today, in the information age, we have all kinds of data at our fingertips, it is true that beyond the ice, seals and penguins, we know very little in general about the Great White Continent. Keep that in mind, because this cold, dry, windy, and unpopulated region contains approximately 90% of all the Earth's ice. It also has 70% of all the planet's fresh water, not to mention the many natural resources of all kinds underneath. So although Antarctica does not have a native population, as the Arctic does, it does have several decades of significant controversies along with political and military interests that may end up provoking serious disputes in the not so distant future. So the question is, are we close to entering the era of Antarctic conflicts? Who hopes to control this vast territory, and what did they intend to do with it? What hidden riches lie behind this story? Well, let's find out. As you know, VisualPolitik viewers, Antarctica is a desert of ice, sparsely inhabited, but nevertheless it has aroused great interest among scientists and explorers for several centuries. Little by little, the various expeditions have been increasing our knowledge of the area. This automatically awakened the ambition of many countries to control this territory. There are currently 7 countries that claim sovereign rights over parts of Antarctica, which created a legal and political tangle that is yet to be resolved. The question is, who are these countries and what exactly are they after? Why so much interest in a frozen territory? We're going to take a look at right now. But first, this is one of those occasions in which we have to start at looking at a little bit of history.
From science to political ambition.
Since at least the 15th century, we can find a continental area called Terra Australis on various maps, an area whose details were completely unknown and which was systematically located south of the Strait of Magellan, that is, South America. This last region, in fact, would be the first to have a relevant political territorial contact with this virgin territory. In 1539, the Spanish crown even appointed Pedro Sancho de la Hoz as governor of the Terra Australis. This was the first time that a power had the pretension of appropriating and governing the area, at least on paper, because the truth is that this did not translate into the construction of bases or attempts to permanently occupy the territory. In fact, the area continued to arouse little interest until the late 19th century and into the early 1920s, when the so-called heroic age of Antarctic exploration took place. In 1898, an expedition led by the Belgian Adrien Garlange de Gomre and composed mainly of Polish, Romanian and Norwegian scientists and explorers became the first human contingent to spend a winter on this frozen continent. From then until World War I, 16 expeditions from 8 different countries were launched, all of them with shared flags amongst different nationalities. However, history took a turn in 1903 when the Scottish National Antarctic Expedition established a meteorological observatory in the South Orkney Islands called Ormond House after the ship was trapped by Antarctic sea ice. When they managed to sail again, they went to Buenos Aires for supplies. There they changed their plans and offered the Argentine government the sale of Ormond House, this base, the instruments and the observation equipment. The president at the time, Julio Argentino Roca, accepted the offer by decree and authorized the Argentine Meteorological Office to take charge of the station, which from that moment on would be known as Orcadas Base. Years later, different countries also deployed bases in the area and added new territorial claims to create a huge jumble of parallels and latitudes that on many occasions, as we will see, overlap. So with that said, the question is very clear. Who on earth controls Antarctica?
Everybody's land or nobody's land.
The political situation of Antarctica is very unusual. It is unique in the world. Let's say that it has formed a sort of joint tenancy, where some countries claim sovereignty of a portion of land, while others, without territorial claims, maintain permanent or temporary scientific research bases there. In general, it is the nations closest to Antarctica that are most intent on expanding their sovereignty of the area. Here, the concept of territorial proximity plays a key role. Specifically, this list you see on the screen shows the countries that maintain some territorial claim over Antarctica, and we have many others with permanent bases. Among them, of course, the United States, Russia, and China, to name just a few examples. In total, it is estimated that there are already more than 70 permanent bases in this territory. From this list, France and Norway justify their claims on the basis of the discoveries that their flag missions made in Antarctica. New Zealand and Australia, being southern nations, justify some geographical proximity. However, everything gets much more interesting and complex when we take a look at the situation of the United Kingdom, Chile, and Argentina. As you can see, these three countries have sovereignty claims over overlapping territories. That is, the British claim among the same portion of land as Chile and Argentina. Yes, all this chaos of sovereignties and all the scientific missions are in a way organized by the international community. In 1959, 12 countries signed the Antarctic Treaty in Washington, an agreement that today encompasses 54 countries. This document established the fundamental basis for managing the area. The idea was to reduce any possibility that Antarctica would end up provoking a large-scale conflict. Basically, these are the key points of the agreement that today dictate how Antarctica is managed. They are the legal boundaries in this inhospitable territory. And that is not all. This treaty has also been strengthened over time, and since the signing of the so-called Madrid Protocol in 1991, the commercial exploitation of mineral resources that can be found is expressly prohibited. The idea is for Antarctica to become an international scientific and natural reserve. And in fact, since 1961, the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting, a kind of forum for making decisions about the site, has been held periodically. In addition, since 2003, the Secretariat of the Antarctic Treaty, an executive body in charge of facilitating the exchange of information between the parties to the treaty and promoting the environmental protocols that must be respected in the incursions made in the area, have also been operating from Buenos Aires. This is something like a kind of Antarctic government in a way. And that is how this frozen continent functions as a kind of nobody's land and also everybody's land at the same time. But okay, I know what you're thinking. So why on earth are we talking about this on VisualPolitik? It doesn't look like much more than a protected natural park or nature reserve. Well, the point, VisualPolitik viewers, is that not everything is so rosy. Starting with the fact that Chile, Argentina, and the United Kingdom share practically the same territorial claim. And tell me, can you think of any better ingredient for a conflict? Well, check this out.
A new Antarctic Cold War.
Antarctic Treaty, Treaty System, Secretariat of the Antarctic Treaty. Yes, so far everything seems very well put together and designed to make Antarctica a zone of cooperation and mutual coexistence. But we are talking about humans, so this has not always been the case. Between 1946 and 1947, the United States promoted Operation High Jump, which consisted of the deployment of 13 ships, 4,700 men, and numerous aircraft in the Antarctic incursion. The objective was to carry out maneuvers and exercises to train personnel and test war material in the extreme cold conditions, thinking, of course, of a potential conflict with the then Soviet Union. Years later, in February 1952, the Esperanza Bay incident took place. In this case, Argentine uniformed personnel deployed a naval detachment north of Antarctica, fired warning shots at British soldiers who were landing materials off the coast of the area managed by Argentina. Then, just 1 year later, in 1953, a similar episode was repeated with the Deception Island incident. 5 British Royal Marines disembarked and captured 2 Argentine sailors in response to the construction of an Argentine refuge in the area. In other words, things were getting pretty tense. The signing of the Antarctic Treaty considerably improved the stability of the area. But then the Falklands War in the 1980s stirred up the issue once again, since the territorial deployment that London maintains on the White Continent is based precisely in Port Stanley, the capital of the Falklands. The presence of the United Kingdom in Antarctica stems from the Malvinas Islands, so the confrontation with Argentina automatically affects the White Continent. Let's just say that Buenos Aires considers the British claim on Antarctica as a colonial act whose origin is in the non-decolonization of the Malvinas or Falkland Islands. Of course, perhaps the confrontation that may develop the most as time goes by is precisely between the 2 South American countries involved in this story, Chile and Argentina.
No confidence.
It is little known, but in 1977, Chile and Argentina were on the brink of war over the Beagle Channel, a marine passage that connects the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean and is claimed by both countries. That year, the Argentine military junta decided to disregard a British arbitration award that established the boundaries of the zone. Instead, it mobilized their armed forces. Pope John Paul II himself had to intervene to persuade both Videla and Pinochet that the use of force was not an alternative. And although today that scenario may seem far-fetched, the fact is that Buenos Aires, Santiago, and London are the protagonists in a 3-way struggle of constant tension at the southernmost tip of South America. A political and diplomatic confrontation that, in recent years, has provided chapters of this story like these ones.
October 2007, Argentina ready to challenge Britain's Antarctic claims. Argentina's foreign minister warned that his country will seek sovereignty over the ocean floor around the Falkland Islands and Antarctica. December 2012, Argentina angry over Antarctic territory named after the Queen. September 2021, Argentina and Chile clash over a maritime dispute in the American South. The government of Buenos Aires accused its Andean counterpart of appropriating 5,500 square kilometers of its marine platform in one of the southernmost areas of the planet. October 2022, the visit of 3 Argentine ministers to Antarctica generated uneasiness in Chile. The tension follows the strengthening of surveillance controls in the South Atlantic by the Argentine government through the creation of the Joint Maritime Command.
So let's see. This is perhaps the most important part of this whole story. Beyond pure politics, the 3 countries do collaborate in terms of rescue and scientific research, but what would happen if the white continent stopped being so boring? Because let's look at it another way. Antarctica is a huge continent covered with ice, but under that ice there could be many things. The same is true for the bottom of the ocean. For starters, Antarctica is the largest freshwater reserve in the world. We are talking about 70% of all the world's water reserves. In addition, their skies are almost entirely free of radio interference, making them potentially ideal for deep space research and satellite tracking, and thus for surveillance, espionage, and remote-controlled weapons operations. Furthermore, a 1992 US Geological Survey concluded that large quantities of oil and natural gas could be present. In a very tentative initial approximation, it calculated that more than 19 billion barrels of crude oil and 106 trillion cubic feet of gas. In other words, if these were the first inquiries, the reality could be much more lucrative. In fact, in recent years, some estimates suggest that we could be talking about more than 200 billion conventional barrels. In other words, Antarctica could contain the largest oil reserves on the planet. And exactly the same goes for many other minerals. Antarctica could be an enormous source of resources, completely virgin and open to the first one who passes by. Of course, the Antarctic Treaty that was mentioned before prohibits the commercial exploitation of natural resources in this region of the world, but some believe that it only does so until the year 2048. There is a lot of debate surrounding this, as you can imagine. Be that as it may, today the cost of extraction would be sky high, not least because the huge ice sheet that covers the continent. But could that change in the future? There is little doubt about technology. Politics is another matter, but 2048? It's not that far away. Could this news story have something to do with all of this?
The Chinese regime increases pressure to build a strategic naval base in Tierra del Fuego. China wants southern Argentina to be its gateway to Antarctica.
Surely in the future, in one way or another, this white continent will give us a whole lot to talk about. But having reached this point, it's now over to all of you. Did you know that so many countries claim sovereignty over Antarctica? What did you think would be the role of Argentina, Chile, and the United Kingdom in the region? Do you think that there may be future political, economic, and even military conflicts located there? Leave us your answers in the comments below and let's open a respectful debate. As always, here on VisualPolitik, we release new videos every single week, so hit the little bell button down there so you don't miss any of our updates. All the best, and I'll see you next time.